What is going on, everyone? My name is Kodomore and welcome back to the New Beginner Java Game Programming Tutorial Series, episode 18. In this episode, we are actually going to load in a world from a file. So to start, I'm going to right click on my res folder here, and I'm going to create a new folder within that res folder, and I'm going to name it world. So this is going to be kind of the folder where we're going to put all of our worlds in. And within this folder, we are going to right click it, and we are going to create a new file, and I'm going to name this file world1.txt, like so, and this is just a blank text file. Now there are many different file formats and methods to loading in a world to a game, and for saving worlds and things like that. What we are going to do is we are going to create our very own file structure that holds world data. You can also use many other things such as XML. You can even load in worlds from an image. But in this tutorial series, we are going to learn how to load in worlds from a file like this. So we need two main pieces of data to start. We need the width and the height of our world, how big the world is. So just for testing purposes, I'm going to create a very small world. I'm going to create a 5 tile by 7 tile world, just for an example. And what we are going to do for our file format is we are going to separate all of our numbers by a single space or by any amount of white space, like a few tabs. I prefer to do it just by having one space. So our first number is going to be the width of our world. The second number is going to be the height of our world. Now just to organize it better, I'm going to enter down a line. We then need 2 more pieces of data. We want the starting X and starting Y position, or the starting position of our player. So the spawn position of our player. What tile should the player start on? So I'm just going to set the player's spawn position to tile 0, 0. So the X tile that the player should spawn on and the Y tile the player should spawn on, or the X and Y coordinates. And now we need the actual world data. Now remember, if we go into our tile class, every tile has an ID, an integer ID. You know, 0, 1, 2, 0 represents a grass tile, 1 represents a dirt tile. Well, that's how we are going to store tile data. We are just going to write the ID number of whatever tile we want to display to the screen in the position on our file. So I have a world of a width of 5. So 5 tiles across. That means every single line must be 5 tiles across, or else we're going to get a bunch of errors. So my top row of tiles is just going to be a bunch of grass tiles, so ID number 0. And I'm going to put 5 of those because it's 5 tiles across. And we need 7 of these rows of tiles because the height of our map or world is 7 tiles, like so. So I'm just going to copy this down line so that we have 7 rows of it. I think I went one too many there. Oh, no I didn't. That's correct. And you just have to change these number IDs to whatever tile that you'd like in that position. So in my tile class here, 0 represents a grass tile, so currently this world would be full of grass tiles, while a number like 1 represents a dirt tile and 2 represents a rock tile. So this whole entire second row here, I'm going to make dirt tiles, so an ID of 1. And then this third row here, I'm going to make a bunch of rock tiles, so IDs of 2. And then on the rest of them, they're just all going to be grass, except I'll maybe add in a dirt tile here and a rock tile there. So this is our very own file structure for a world. The first number represents the width of our world. The second number represents the height of our world in tiles, of course. The third number will represent the spawn player X, or the X coordinate of the player to start. The fourth number will represent Y coordinate of the player to start. And then the rest is just a bunch of tile IDs. So there we go. We just created our very own world format, and it's in a file called world1.txt in our worlds file here in our project. So in our game state where we create our new world, we're going to have to pass in the file path of our world. Remember, the world class takes in the file path of the world. Unlike textures, you're actually going to have to include the resources folder here. Then we want to access the worlds folder, and then the name of your world file. So world1.txt for me. And you can of course even add your own file extension like .lvl, so .level file, but I'm just going to keep it as .txt. So that's all we have to do in the game state class. All the rest of the coding is going to be mostly in this world class inside of the load world method, because the constructor of the world here calls the load world method just passing along the file path that we just passed into this class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my main package here, and I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to name this class utils and put it in the .utils package of the game. Now util stands for utilities, and basically this class just contains a bunch of helper functions that can assist us anywhere in our game. So we are going to make a function that loads in a file for us. So we're going to create a public static function so we can access it from anywhere, and it's going to return a string, so the file contents, and I'm going to name it load file as string. And it's of course going to take in a string path, so the location of the file on our computer. Next, we are going to create a string builder object, which I'm just going to call builder, and set that equal to a new string builder object. And string builder, in case you don't know, it basically allows you to add characters to a string very easily. Next, we want to create a try and catch statement, because we're going to need that in case any errors occur. And we're going to catch an IO exception, which I will name E, and then if an error does occur, we're just going to do e.printStackTrace, so we print the error to the screen. So within the try statement here's where we have to load in the file. We're going to need a buffered reader, and I'm just going to name this BR, and I'm sure that you've all done this before. That's going to be equal to a new buffered reader object. And as a parameter, we are going to want a new file reader, and then we just want to pass in the path, which we take in as a parameter for this, and import file reader. So now we can use this BR object to read in our file. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create a string called line, and this will be the current line of the file that we're working on. Then we're going to create a while loop, and then in parentheses in the while loop, we're going to set the line variable equal to br.readLine. So we're going to read the next line of the file. And as long as this line doesn't equal null, so in other words, as long as we haven't hit the end of the file, we want to use our string builder, and we want to do builder.append, so we're going to add to a string whatever the line is. We have to, after we read every line, append a new line character, which is simply \n, signifying a new line. Now after this while loop exits and it's no longer running, we have to do br.close, so we have to close the file stream. Next, we have to of course return the file that we just loaded, which is as simple as we have to return a new string, so we're going to do our builder object .toString, and that'll just convert everything that we've appended to the builder object into a string for us, which will be the loaded file. Now while we're here, we're actually going to create another method in this utils class. It's going to be called a public static method, of course. It's going to return an integer, and we're going to call it parseInt. And it is going to take in a string, which I'll call number. So what this method is going to do is it's going to take in a string, like a string with the number 5 in it, and it's actually going to convert that to an integer value of 5. Now we are going to put this in a try catch statement again, and we are going to catch a number format exception. So if you try and pass it in a string that is not a number, so like the letters ABC, obviously that's not a number, so it's going to throw an error. And what we want to do is we want to do e.printStackTrace, so we're going to print the error to the screen, that way you know something happened. But so that our program doesn't crash, we're just going to return 0 as default. Alright, and now in the actual try block here, so we have to return integer.parseInt, parseInt, and then pass in that number string that we took in as a parameter, and that should do it. Those are the two methods that we're going to need inside of this utils class for today. Now let's get back to this load world method and try to load in a world. We're going to create a string, and I'm going to name that file, so the actual loaded in file, and that's going to be equal to our utils class .load file as string, and we're going to pass it in the path or location of the world file. Now if we take a look at our world file here, we'll notice that we split everything up by either a space or by a bunch of enters or new lines. And what we want to do is, in our world class, is convert all of these numbers into actual numbers. So what we have to do is we have to split up this string, this loaded in file. We have to split up every individual number. So what we're going to do is, in our world class here, we are going to take a string array, so an array of every single number inside of this file, and I'm going to call this tokens, and I'm going to equal that to file.split, so we're going to split the file on something, and we want to split it on any amount of white space, so a space character or a new line character. So what that is inside of quotations \\s plus. And then we'll end that. So what this will do is it'll take our file and it'll split up every little number here into its own little string thing and put it into a string array. That way we can access all of them separately. Now we have to set the width and height of our world. So what we're going to do is we're going to set width equal to our utils class .parseInt. So we're going to convert a string into a number, and that's going to be our tokens array at the 0th element, or the very first number in our file, which we said was the width. And we're going to do the same exact thing for height. So I'm going to copy down this line, it's going to be tokens at index 1, and that will be the height of our map in tiles. The next two numbers that we have are the starting spawn x and y for the player. Now I actually forgot to add those variables in the last tutorial, so up here, create two private integers. I'm going to call these spawn x and spawn y like so. And just like for width and height, we can do the same exact thing. Go down here, except the x position is going to be at index 2, and the y position is going to be at index 3. So let me change these variable names to spawn x and spawn y, like so. So these are obviously reading in the first four numbers of our file. First, the width, height, spawn x, spawn y, and setting those variables appropriately. Now, every single number after this is actual world data, ID numbers of tiles. And we have to read all that data into this tiles array. So first things first, we have to initialize that tiles array equal to a new integer multi-dimensional array with the size of width for one dimension and height for the other dimension. And I'm sorry, this should be a new int array like so. And then we're going to go ahead and create two for loops. So for int y equals 0 and y is less than the height of our map y plus plus. And then inside of this we'll have another x1. So int x equals 0, x is less than the width of our map, and x plus plus, just like we do for the render loop. And what we want to do is we want to set tiles at whatever the current x and y position in the for loop is equal to. Now this is where it gets a bit tricky. First of all, it has to be an integer, so we're going to have to do utils.parseInt, and we're going to have to parse something into an integer number. And it's going to be something in the tokens array, except this tokens array is a one-dimensional array. So we have to convert the two x and y for loop positions into whatever proper position it is, into the proper position in our tokens array. And that's actually fairly simple. In parentheses here, we're going to do x plus y times width. And that will appropriately convert the x and y of the for loops into this one-dimensional array index. But we also have to add 4. And we actually have to add 4 because we are setting the first 4 elements in the world file, 0, 1, 2, and 3, to variables, and they're not actual world data. So we have to add 4 to everything. And there you go. That should appropriately set all the width, height, spawn x, spawn y variables, and set all of the IDs in the tiles array. We already have the render method set up, so this should hopefully give us a loaded world. Let's try it out. Go ahead and run your program. And look at that, our world is functioning perfectly. First row was grass, second row was dirt, third row was rock tiles, and then we have a dirt and a rock tile down here, and you can't even see the whole map because it goes off the screen. So at some point in this tutorial series, we are going to have to learn how to move this map around, but that's going to come later. Thank you so much everyone for watching. We loaded in worlds. Go ahead, make a bunch of tiles, make some really elaborate worlds, because this is where game programming gets really fun. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.